Okay, so today we're going to tackle a word that you hear all the time, geopolitics, right? It gets thrown around to explain, well, pretty much everything, from global conflicts to trade wars. But what does it actually mean? Let's get into it.
So let's ask it straight up. What is geopolitics really? I mean, we hear it invoked to explain everything: global conflicts, trade disputes, even climate change. It kind of feels like it's supposed to be this secret key for understanding how the world works. But, trying to pin down one simple definition, it's surprisingly tough.
All right, so here's a good working definition. At its absolute core, geopolitics is a struggle. And look at the keywords here, because they're really important. Struggle. That means competition, right? A fight. And what's the prize? Control of geographical entities. So we're talking about land, vital resources, key shipping lanes. And the end game? The whole point of it? Political advantage. It's all about using geography, where things are, to get a leg up and win on the global stage.
To really get a grip on what geopolitics means today, we've got to go back to where it all started. And that's with something called classical geopolitics. For a long, long time, this was the way to look at the world. The only way, really. Think of it like seeing the entire planet as this giant chessboard, viewed from way, way up high, like a God's eye view. And if there was a high priest of this whole worldview, it was definitely this guy, British geographer Sir Halford Mackinder. He came up with this single idea. I mean, you could almost call it the world's first geopolitical tweet. It's so short and punchy. But this one sentence, it basically shaped global strategy for a century. It's a simple, powerful, and honestly, a pretty terrifying formula for world domination. So this map is the key to his whole theory. See that big area in the middle? Mackinder called that the Heartland. His argument was pretty clever. He said this region was basically a natural fortress. You couldn't get to it with ships, with sea power, which was dominant at the time. So his logic went, whoever controls the Heartland and all its resources, well, they can control the world island. That's Eurasia and Africa combined. And if you control that, you can control the entire world. But here's the thing, and this is so important to understand. This classical view, it was never neutral, not even close. If you look at its features, it becomes super clear. It was a perspective that came from a very specific place, usually elite white Western men. And it had this very masculine, all-seeing, all-knowing kind of vibe. Its method was to just label parts of the world, giving them value and meaning from this one perspective. And then, and this is the kicker, it presented these ideas as universal truths to justify whatever foreign policy they wanted to pursue. And the whole game was just about states. Big, powerful states competing for territory. But, nothing lasts forever. Eventually, other thinkers started to push back. They started asking some really sharp questions like, wait a minute, is that God's eye view the only way to see things? And who does that view actually benefit? That kind of skepticism kicked off this huge shift in thinking, what we call a critical turn. People started to question the very map they'd been given. And the shift here it's huge. Just look at the difference. Classical geopolitics, it's all top-down. It's focused on big states, big empires. And its goal is basically to explain the world so you can control it. But critical and feminist geopolitics, they just flip that completely on its head. They look at the world from the ground up. They focus on actual people and how power works in their lives. And their goal isn't to control, it's to question things so we can understand them better. So the big question changes from a simple who has power to something much deeper. How is that power even created and used in the first place? So a really key insight from this critical way of thinking is all about language. The idea is that the words we hear from politicians, the headlines we read in the news, even the stuff we see in movies, it isn't just describing the world. It's actively building it. It creates what you might call our common sense view of the world. All those deep-seated ideas and assumptions we have about other countries and other people that we just never really think to question. And we're not just talking about some dusty academic papers here. This stuff is literally all around us every single day. Think about it. A James Bond movie, right? Who's the villain? Where are they from? Or a politician giving a speech about some threat on the other side of the world. Even a Captain America comic book draws a really clear line between the good guys and the bad guys. We just kind of soak all these stories in, and without even realizing it, they start to shape how we see the world. Okay, so now we're going to take this critique and go even deeper with the feminist perspective. If critical geopolitics is looking at things like language and power, feminist geopolitics says that's great, but to really understand what's going on, we need to zoom in even closer. We have to shift our focus away from the abstract idea of a battlefield and onto something very real,
the human body.
So, what does that mean? It means we move away from that distant, cold, strategic map of states and armies, and we move towards something called an embodied perspective. And that's really just a way of saying, what does this stuff actually feel like for the human beings on the ground? It's all about lived experience, not just some grand strategy game. And these are the kinds of questions that a feminist geopolitical lens forces us to ask. It's no longer just about troop movements or what treaty got signed. It's about the very real human cost, the consequences of those big decisions. It makes us see geopolitics not as some abstract game played by powerful people, but as a force that shapes and sometimes completely shatters the lives of real individuals. So you might be thinking, okay, great, so these new critical and feminist ideas have replaced all that old school stuff, right? Well, here's the twist. Not only has classical geopolitics not gone away, it's actually making a huge comeback. It is alive and well, and you could even say it's thriving. We are absolutely seeing a return of the classics. I mean, you don't have to look far. Just look at these book titles, all from the last couple of decades. They tell the whole story, don't they? They're all about identifying new threats, predicting the next big war, and carving the world up into dangerous hotspots. And guys like Robert Kaplan, they've become huge bestsellers writing this kind of stuff, which tells you there's a massive appetite out there for these really clear, simple, and yeah, often pretty scary geopolitical stories.
And if you boil them all down, they share a very common message. The world is a dangerous, competitive place. And the solution they offer? It's almost always the same. A powerful military and a foreign policy that draws a hard line between us and them. Now, if that sounds familiar, well, it should, because it's basically Mackinder's old classical worldview, just with a new coat of paint for the 21st century.
So, after all that, what's the big takeaway? What's the one thing to remember? It's this. No matter which lens you're looking through, classical, critical, or feminist, none of them are neutral. The stories we tell, the maps we draw, the words we use, they don't just describe the world. They actively help create it. Put simply, the way we talk about the world actually shapes the world itself. And look, the point of understanding all this isn't to decide which one is right. It's about giving yourself a new set of tools to think more critically. So the next time you see a map on the news, or you hear someone talking about a global threat, just pause for a second and ask yourself two really simple but incredibly powerful questions. Whose story am I being told right now? And maybe even more important, whose story is being left out?